Hello distinction students, this is your tutor Miss Zulu. Welcome to today's commerce online lesson where we're going to look at the different documents that are used in home trade, right? So, documents used in home trade, we have the inquiry, we have the tender, price list, quotation, order, advice note, delivery note, an invoice, credit note, debit note, statement of account, check, and a receipt. So, let's look at them in details. When we talk about an inquiry, this is a letter prepared by the buyer and is sent to the supplier, asking for the availability of goods, their sizes, price, delivery dates, and terms of sale. It is possible to make a verbal inquiry on the telephone and ask for a quotation, right? So though it carries more weight when it's written, right? So we look at the tender. This is sent to the seller in response to an advertisement inviting quotations or estimates for the supply of certain goods. So when we talk about an estimate, this is an order to carry out a service or to undertake work for someone at a certain price, right? So the price is not fixed, it's just estimated, right? So their terms of payment may include cash and tender discount. So when we're talking about and trade discount, So when we're talking about the trade discount, this is usually shown or calculated on the invoice. It is allowed to those in trade or customers who are buying, right, to sell again for a profit, usually referred to as a profit margin. So when you talk about a cash discount, it is a reduction from the invoice price, right? So it is given to encourage promptly payment, or we can say early payment. So it helps to avoid bad debts and speeds up the cash flow system of the business. It enables the retailer to earn a good reputation with the suppliers. So now we look at the order. So this is an instruction to the supplier to supply a particular good. Like you want a particular good, you don't want maybe a lot of goods, but you want this particular one good, right? So you make an order. It can be made on a special order form or in an ordinary letter. Orders may also be placed on a phone, or available orders must be followed up by a written document to avoid misquotation and the supply of wrong items, right? So the description of these goods required, the quality ordered, right? You're supposed to look at the quality of something that you're ordering. So that one is put maybe in a quotation. Then when you talk about this order, it has a delivery date and the cost of the carriage. So it has the terms of the sale specifying specific things, or rather whether you're getting it on credit or there's a discount that has been offered. So the importance of this order is that it confirms the customer's seriousness in purchasing a product or a good, right? So now we look at the quotation. This is a reply to the inquiry, right? It's usually sent by the supplier to the customer. It contains a detailed description of goods asked, or the goods that are available. You talk about the color, and you also talk about the quality. So the price at which goods are offered, terms and conditions of sales, including terms of payment and delivery dates. So for this one, the customer uses the quotation to compare the prices and the conditions offered by the suppliers. Before placing an order, right, you need to inquire. So it shows, so when you talk about this quotation, mostly it shows the name and the address of the seller. So now we look at the advice note. So the advice note is sent to advise the buyer that the goods ordered have been detached. It's usually sent ahead of the goods, right? It simplifies the method of transport used, the date of detach, quality and description of the goods. So if the goods do not arrive within the reasonable period of time, the buyer should advise the seller, right? So when you talk about this advice note, it usually shows what is on the invoice, right? It provides an opportunity for the buyer to spot out mistakes, right? You can spot out the mistakes in this advice note, and those mistakes can be corrected quickly or in advance, right, before those goods arrive. So we talk about the delivery note. So it usually contains the same information as the advice note. It is sent with goods in order to assist the buyer to check the goods on which date they are about to arrive, isn't it, or they're going to arrive. So it is used when the seller is using his or her own transport to deliver the goods to the buyer's premises. A duplicate copy is signed by the buyer acknowledging receipt of the goods. So the delivery note is not usually the same as the invoice, right? Except that the prices are also like omitted. Let's talk about an invoice. So an invoice, this is a bill sent by the supplier to his customer containing details of the goods supplied, irrelevant to the order made, such as description of goods sent, quality supplied, prices changed, terms of sale, trade discount, and value of added tax, if any, right? So this is important because it shows the quality of goods supplied by the unity and total price. It also tells the buyer the amount that they owe the supplier, isn't it? And it shows the details and description of that of the goods. So it is also used by the supplier to start an accounting process. It is also required for payment of goods supplied to the seller, right? So let's discuss the credit note. So this is usually printed and typed in red so that it will not be confused with an invoice or a debit note. It is insured when the seller owes the buyer some money and totals and are usually subtracted from the invoice before it is paid. Reduces the amount indicated on the invoice. So this one, when you talk about the credit note, it informs the buyer that he or she or his account has been credited, right? A credit note is sent by the seller to correct an overcharge or allowed for the return of 40 goods or empty crates and containers which the buyers has ordered or bought. So when you talk about this credit card, it corrects the mistakes that appear on the invoice. In a situation where that invoice had mistakes in a credit note, that's where they are corrected. So it can also ensure a claim of the extra money outstanding in case there's any money that is outstanding. So when you talk about this credit note, it is important because it informs the buyers of the undercharge or claims the extra money outstanding, right? That's why this credit note is important. And yes, so let's look at the debit note. So this debit note, this is a document sent to the buyer by the seller if he or she has been undercharged. It is issued to claim the extra money outstanding. In other words, the debit note asks the buyer to pay the difference or the amount by which he or she has been undercharged. It may be issued if, for example, some delivered items are committed on an invoice. So this also in a situation where you've been overcharged or you've paid a lot of money or you're undercharged. This is where you claim the money that is outstanding, right? Let us look at the statement of account. So this is a summary of all transactions made between the buyer and the seller during the month. It is sent by the supplier to the buyer every month. The main pieces of this information that are contained in this statement of account are the balance owing to the beginning of the month, amount of invoices issued during the month, payments made during the month, credit or debit notes that are issued during the month, and net amount owing to the end of the month. So when you talk about this statement of account, it confirms the transactions that have been made between the buyer and the seller, right? So I can also say it reminds the customer that the payment is due if the customer got those goods on credit, right? And then again, it enables the buyer to compare the account records kept by the supplier with his or her own records, isn't it? Like, it's more like a record keeping, right? Let's look at a check. So a check is sent by the buyer to the seller as one of the methods of payments for the goods, right? Since the date on the check is a day on which the purchaser paid the supplier, the check acts as a record of a date or payment. Payments for the goods would also be made by standing order, credit transfer, or direct debit. So when I talk about this check, most of the information that is found on this check is the date on which the check is drawn, right? We can also talk about what's found on this check is the name of the payee. On this check, the other information that is found there is the bank which the check is drawn and the name of the drawee, right? We can also have the signature of the drawer and the amount written in words and both in figures, right? So thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel for more sessions.